Alrighty, everyone. Thanks for being so patient. We're going to get started now. Christian's going to be talking about working at the heart of the team and more about the Accelerator program itself. We're also going to have a Q&A channel on Gilded where you can post your questions for Christian there. And then we also have our automated translation inscriptions in the chat as well. So take it away.
Cool. Thank you, KP, and hello, everyone. Welcome. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about production, which is something that I feel like a lot of Roblox developers don't realize its importance. So this is the agenda. I'm going to do a quick introduction, tell you a few things that I've learned in my day-to-day role in the Accelerator. And then we'll hop right into project management, what it is, why it is, who it is, all the fun things. Cool. So this is me. Hello, I am Christian Hunter. I am a technical program manager at Roblox. I started playing Roblox way back in the day in 2008. I made a bunch of games on an account called Smooth Block Model, like the Hunger Games and Don't Blink and Ventureland, but eventually, after participating in the Accelerator, I got hired to work on it. So if you're unfamiliar with what the Accelerator is, it's a 3-month funding period where we allow teams to pitch what they want to work on, and then they come into our program, they get all sorts of resources, people to consult with, access to internal Roblox, and their goal is to ship their game by the end of the program. I've done 10 programs so far, and so with that, I've collaborated with tons and tons and tons of developers, and so I've seen a lot of interesting things that happen each class. So I would say, well, actually, let's start here. So this is my thesis for the entire presentation. My hope is by the end of this, you realize that proper project management will increase the efficiency of a team. I would just say it should always be a thing, but of course, I'm sure many of you have made games where you never even thought about project management. So it's not that it's impossible without it, but especially as your team size starts to scale, it becomes a much more important piece of the puzzle. So here's some things that I've learned just after working with so many Roblox developers. There's two things that I always see program to program. The first one is that smaller teams just notoriously are better at reaching the finish line. I do not say this as a way to discourage you from having a large team. The reason I believe this is the case is because when you have a smaller team, project management is a smaller role. So you can juggle that role and whatever other vital role you have, like programming, designing, building, without too much issue. But once you start getting that bigger team, that role becomes much bigger, scales. And so every team that we have seen had some success after the program, that's more than 4 individuals, they always have one person who from the start was dedicated to project management. So that's the first thing that I would say. The second thing is that any team that had something playable in the first 2 to 3 weeks always reached the finish line. The reason I bring this up is because it's very difficult to get it right what you prioritize in the beginning. You could work on literally anything, right? You have a blank canvas. So I believe your top priority should always be getting people to experience whatever you want to create as soon as possible. One notorious thing that developers do is they want this perfect experience before they let people try it. And I think it's because they're fearful that if people see something that's a work in progress, they may never come back if they didn't enjoy it. But this is bad because it's like a rough draft. You know, if you're writing a paper, that paper will come out much better in its final iteration. If you do a rough draft, you give that rough draft to someone and then you let them give you some notes. It's the same thing with a player experience. You're going to learn a lot more about how to fine tune your experience by letting people try it. And so focusing on things like player data, frameworks, even like polishing UI are notorious mistakes that I see a lot of accelerators working on in the first few weeks of their program. All right, so what is a project manager? So by definition, a project manager is the person in charge of overall planning and execution. So it's just a specific individual who ensures that there is a plan, and then they ensure that that plan is actually executed on. Seems simple enough, I know. But a project manager is not always the visionary, especially on big teams. So typically you'll have one or two people who they have this great idea, they want to build it out. Maybe they'll get some of their friends to work on it with them. Most times, those two people or one person are probably the worst person to be the project manager because they have just so many ideas. They need someone to control them, someone who can kind of balance them out and make sure that even though they have all these whimsical ideas, they focus on the right things first. So it's hard to let go of control. So it's important to focus on what you're best at, especially on larger teams. So if you can give that control away to someone else, we're all in this together. We're all working on the same project. So it can be really beneficial to not only you, but your whole team. And just emphasizing here that project management is a role. If you're a programmer, if you're a builder, well, you can also be a project manager. On smaller teams, it's sort of not thought about because you can get away with, like I said, doing multiple. But each increase of that headcount is just going to make this a bigger and bigger role until eventually, once you hit like 5 or 6 people, you need someone who literally all they do is project management. They don't do anything else. And again, this is just my opinion. So how do you project manage? Well, there's a few tips that I have. This is going to be following more of like here, I'll just get right into it. So let's start with roadmaps. So a roadmap is a high level of attack. It's a very high level idea of everything that we need to get done and when. So the problem that this solves is when you're going into a project, you know where you want to end up, kind of like climbing a mountain like Everest. You know that you want to peak at the top of the mountain, but you don't really know all the steps that are involved in actually getting to that peak. So having a roadmap allows you to visually see everything that you're going to have to go through in order to reach that final goal. So when you're building out a roadmap, it's important to break down every piece of your experience into something that's bite-sized and digestible. And then once you've done that, you need to triage everything. So what do we need immediately so that people can start experiencing this, so that we can start testing the fun, making sure this is something people enjoy? And then what comes after that to make sure that after those people have a good time, they want to come back. So once you have that roadmap, your next job is to sort of break it into checkpoints or sprints. So think of it as 1 to 2 weeks of work. You take all the things that you need to get done. You have some sort of overall goal. So maybe if we're taking the mountain approach, you need to reach base camp 1. That's the goal of this sprint. And then you need to assign each person on your team tasks that correlate with your roadmap. So if your roadmap says the first thing that we need to do is make a combat system because our game is a combat game, assign programmer 1 certain tasks for the front end, programmer 2 tasks for the back end. Maybe you need an artist to make a sword. And all of that should be clearly laid out, with the goal being that we can see any possible dependencies, we can see the order in which we need to get these things done. And this just takes all the work off of these people So now they don't have to like go through and figure this out in their head, like, oh gosh, how do I start here? Where do I go? You've accomplished all of that already. So now they can just spend all of their time doing what they need to do rather than thinking about how they're going to do it. So once you've created that checkpoint, you need to set deadlines. Deadlines are so important. A lot of like friend groups will come into the accelerator and they hate to hold each other accountable, but deadlines are just the absolute best way to do it. It's a very simple, this is the date and the time that this needs to be completed so that we can stay with our roadmap and we're not getting too far behind or too far ahead. So then it comes up, okay, so I assign someone a task and they miss their deadline. What do I do? I don't want to fire them. Well, no. When a deadline is missed, that's just your red alert that you need to reach out to this individual and see what they need to get done, whatever it is that they need to get done. So maybe they just need some help. Maybe their task is too ambiguous and they're having issues figuring out where to start. Or maybe there's someone else on your team who happens to be blocking them and they just didn't say anything when you were talking about the sprint. There's so many possibilities. So when that deadline's missed, that's just when you start to reach out daily or consistently to make sure that they feel helped or assisted. So you've got that, you've got your checkpoint, you've got all the deadlines so that you know when things need to be accomplished. Now you need to do day-to-day communications. So you could just let the people go, this is what we need done by this time, and that's that. Let's not talk until the next one. I don't think that's a good idea. I think it's really important to meet with your team on a regular basis and talk about what you all are doing that day, what you accomplished the previous day. Make sure that nobody is blocked, there's no dependencies, and just see if anybody could help each other. I always tell accelerators to over communicate. You would rather be annoying and have someone tell you like, hey, you're talking to me too much, than be silent and waiting for someone to like hit you up and say, hello, are you there? Always better to over communicate. And it's also very important not only to meet with your entire team, but to meet with people one-on-one. So this is something that very, very few accelerators do, but it's important to meet with people one-on-one because they will bring things up in a smaller circle that they would not bring up in a larger circle. And I'm going to talk about that a little more in a bit, but I would like to move on to the final piece, which is doing retrospectives. So you have a roadmap, you've established a checkpoint, you know when you want to get that checkpoint done with deadlines, and you've communicated about it consistently. So now we're here, we've reached base camp 1. So we're going to take everything we've done and we're going to play it because that's what we do. We make games. And so you're going to play it and you're going to figure out what did we do really well and what did we not do so well that we need to improve on. Figure out any issues, just kind of refine this process because this whole thing is a loop. And your goal is after each one to do a retrospective so that the next loop goes even better. So ideally it just gets better and better until you're doing retrospectives and there's nothing but good, which probably won't happen. There's goods and bads. And make sure when you complete a retrospective, you then reference your roadmap to make sure that you're on par with where you said you would be. Because what a roadmap does is not only will it tell you if you're going too slow, it will also tell you if you're going too fast, which is probably more common. Usually people go way too fast in the beginning, completely burn themselves out, and then they get nothing done. So it's really important as a project manager to set a pace that can be followed throughout the entire duration of a project. It's probably the hardest thing to do, but it's just like running a race. Like you're not going to be able to sprint that whole 4 miles. You need to establish a consistent speed that you can run so that you can finish it. So I just told you all the things that are important to do for project management. There are some things that if you are the project manager, you need to be on the lookout for. The first one and the most common one is feature creep. Oh gosh, the worst. It will happen, especially with more people, because everyone in this field is creative, and creative people have creative ideas, and sometimes they just don't know how to limit their creativity, and they shouldn't. You should never limit it. But you have to remember that everything carries a cost. There's opportunity costs. So not only are you focusing on something else, but you're taking time away from what you should be focusing on. So it's going to cause you to drift from your roadmap, and you can always add things later. Like, this is not back in the day when we had discs for games and that's all that there was. Like, you have the amazing opportunity to add things afterwards. So it's really important to have this beautiful place called a backlog. It's very popular in any sort of project management tool like Hack and Plan or Trello or Notion. And what a backlog is it's just a place to throw all of your fun ideas, because it's important to write those things down, because then you get like that hit you're looking for, because you're like, oh my God, but it's such a good idea. Well, go write about it in the backlog, put all of your notes, get it all down. And then at some point in the future, after we've established our experience, we've got players, they're coming back, then we can go to that list and we can find all the fun things that we wanted to do and we can do them. The next thing that a project manager needs to be on the lookout for is team conflict. Again, it will happen no matter what. Humans do not jive perfectly with other humans. We're all unique beings. And with that comes some really good synergies and some really not so good synergies. It's really important to do one-on-ones, because this is where you will discover the most of your team conflicts. It's really unfortunate. I've worked with a lot of Accelerator teams who will have issues the entire program that they do not bring up until the very end when they have not reached their goal. And I'm asking why. And it's because there was some sort of conflict the entire time that they didn't want to bring up. And it's very often because whoever was leading this group never really talked to people individually. They just like always sat in a Discord call all day as a group. So they never were given that space to talk about what was going on. Sometimes, or not sometimes, anytime you discover some sort of conflict, it should be handled as soon as possible within reason. Always good to usually have some sort of mediator there. So, I mean, the project manager is probably going to act as a mediator most of the time, but maybe you're having some sort of technical conflict and you're not a very technical person. So maybe you find somebody who is more technical, who's on the outside, who can help them sort of deduce their issues. And just always remember, everyone's goal is to get to the finish line. Like, we all have the same goal. It doesn't really matter whose fault it is. What matters is that we continue making progress. So some final thoughts. The first one is a project manager can make or break a team, so select yours wisely. I'd love to tell you some attributes of what makes a good project manager. This is someone who is very organized, someone who probably likes to draw or likes to write things down a lot, someone who is a very good communicator, because the truth is not everyone has communication skills. So if you can find someone who's very good at speaking to others, that is something you want to utilize as best you can. So yeah, I would say look for those things if you're trying to find a project manager or figure out who on your team would do it best. Chances are it's not the engineer or the programmer, because they have a huge job already. They should not be organizing this project. Next is visuals and organizational tools can help to align, communicate, and delegate. We used to almost require people to use organizational tools in the Accelerator, but we cut that because a lot of smaller teams, it's just like extra work almost than it is beneficial. Because like I said, when you have that small group, it's not as there's less possibilities for miscommunication. But I think any team larger than 4, you should absolutely have some sort of board where you have all of your tasks, all of the things, lots of visuals. It helps and it makes things more clear. And plus, you probably have someone dedicated to maintaining it, rather than people needing to do that for themselves. Creating a culture of accountability, not blame. So basically what I was just riffing on, it really doesn't matter who is wrong, and you can go back and forth all day, all night with someone about why you are right and why they are wrong, and they're going to do this exact same thing. So just get past that and rather focus on how do we fix this so that we can work together and make progress. Because you want to have a collaborative team. You don't want to just have that one person who's like carrying the group. And in order to have a collaborative team, you need to make sure everyone is doing what they do best and not doing things that they're not so great at, because that's a waste of their time. So with that, I hope I have convinced you that proper project management will increase the efficiency of a team. And that is the end of my presentation. So does anybody have any questions that I can answer or comments? I hope you enjoyed.
Woohoo! Thanks, Christian. Looks like we already have some comments filtered in, but just a reminder for everyone, you can submit your questions on our Gilded server under workshop Q&A, but we'll start off with the first one. This first one's by Opulent. By definition of finish line, what would you say is highly indicative of a project or a game that has reached a satisfactory display to have reached that point?
That is a great question. So what I tell Accelerator, we actually have this crown in the Accelerator that they can earn if they ship it or get to the finish line. And they always ask, what does that mean? So what I deem a shipped or reaching the finish line is it's public, it's playable, and there's progression. So I can hop in the experience whenever I want. I can experience, and there is something that is bringing me back to that experience. It's not just like a one and done type thing. So that's what I would say you've reached your finish line. Now, everyone's finish line is different. Really, it's what is your goal and what do you want to realize? And once you feel you've realized that, you're at the finish line. But I mean, let's be real, we're never really done.
Alrighty, so our next one is by Wooly Woo, parentheses, hi Christian. Pass the accelerator program and your game isn't released. What's your suggestion on trying to keep teams working on that game rather than abandoning it?
I guess you have to reflect on why wasn't it finished during the program? Was it a certain individual not carrying their weight? Was it the team just didn't jive? Like, you have to determine why it didn't happen then. And so my advice would be, it's probably, if you want me to be really honest, it's probably not worth it to keep going, because like, why haven't you finished it already? But what can you salvage from that experience? So maybe this one wasn't the one, but maybe there's a bunch of awesome tech that you can take into the next one. There's the experience you've learned so much. So now you can take that and that will improve the next one. But I think it's a really hard thing to just admit that something isn't working. And it's a strong thing to do so that everyone can just move forward. Not saying you should always do this though. I mean, maybe the reason that you didn't finish was because it's just so massive. So maybe you just need to make the scope much smaller so that you can start realizing what the heck you're building.
And then next one is from Guarana. Where should I start as a beginner project manager? Do you have any learning resources recommendations?
There's tons of resources just like on the internet. Like, now you know this term project manager. So just do some Googling for project. I know there's like, you could Google like Agile. Agile is a certain methodology for project management. And there's lots of different methodologies. Like Sprint kind of falls in that category. There's also Waterfall. So you can start looking into like different methodologies of project management. And I would just say, try to be more organized than you used to be. So if you're new to project management, find a project management tool that you really like. For me, I used to like Hack and Plan, but Notion is like pretty awesome. So I use that one. Internally at Roblox, we use this program called Rike. So that's what I use for my job. So you want to find a tool you like, and then you just kind of want to start organizing things, like making plans. And once you have that plan, if you can find a team, then start executing on it.
I know Notion's super popular. I personally love Notion too. But next question is a two-parter from Gabs. So first part of the question is, do you have any tips or best practices for giving constructive feedback?
Yes. Just give it. Be straightforward. Don't do the sandwich thing. I hate the sandwich. If you don't know what a sandwich is, it's where you like say something nice about someone and then you give them the feedback and then you say something nice about them again. Um, just be real with someone. I mean, you should know your teammates and you're going to get to know them a lot better through one-on-ones. You'll understand their personality a little more. So get that understanding so that you understand how to give them that constructive feedback. I think the best way is to just approach it directly, give it immediately, but don't do it in a way where you're bringing them down. Make sure that you're just consistently reminding them that you're just trying to help. You just want to, you're worried about the roadmap, and I would do your best to not say what they are doing wrong, but more focus on the project itself. Like don't attack them, but rather focus on just like the project and how it's affecting the project and how it's affecting the team. Um, and always do it on a one-on-one. Never, I highly discourage giving feedback in a group setting, even if it feels small. You don't want to humiliate someone, and even if something might not feel humiliating to you, it might be to them. You don't know how other people experience the world. So always do it behind closed doors. And if you're seeing that you have to give this very often, then maybe you need to consider working with other people.
All right, and then the second part to their question is, bonding teams often work best together. Do you have any recommended events, moments to help members bond together?
Yeah. For the Accelerator, the first week, we always play a bunch of Roblox games, and we like do a best Roblox gamer event. So we all know Roblox as a platform pretty well. That's a great place to bond with each other, just playing cool games. If you can get together in person, that is magical and a great experience you should have, even if it's only for a few days, just because you'll learn a lot more about your teammates in person. Um, and then I guess you can get off Roblox and play like Gartic Phone is a good one, like just like icebreaker type things.
All right, so this is kind of a lengthy one, so we're gonna break it up for you, Christian. So let me start it. Hold on, sorry. To start
No
this
worries.
off, it's so Opulent Crescent says, I believe that a mentality of us versus the program problem is a much better construct. I have recently started using these grounds of thinking in the recent months. I agree with this wholeheartedly. This is a long summary, but with these points agree well with your views. So the first part of it is smaller teams are better for efficiency in terms of scaling. Um, so I guess in this term, like, do you agree with that statement or any other opinions on it?
I do believe I do believe my opinion is that it is better to start something new with less people. And I think it's better to add people once you need them. The accelerator kind of allows you to have up to 5 people. So I think some people just like bring a lot, but they're not really ready to have that many people. So I do agree that a smaller group will get the ball rolling faster.
All right, and then the next part is playable projects in the first 2 to 3 weeks are more likely to finish the finish line with 1 to 2 project managers. there's asterisk. So nice ideas, focus on the right things first, though. Keep things grounded and trying to divide control and make sure that you have all areas covered first. So I guess if they're wondering if that's something along the lines of what you agree with, or if you have any other opinions.
I don't think you need more than one project manager. You probably only need one. For like, probably don't need a second one until you've got like 10 plus people. But yeah, you getting it playable is important as soon as possible. So I agree with that. I'm a little confused about the rest.
I believe I saw that they were typing in chat, so I'm sure they'll clarify later on, but we're not even halfway there yet.
Yo, let's
So
go.
yay. All right, so the next kind of subject line for this part is called roadmap, high level of attack. So they ask, what problem does this solve? Where do you want to end up? And what are the steps to fully flesh this journey out? So these are the steps that they mentioned under this type of subject line of roadmap. One is triage everything. What do we need to make this enjoyable? And then also, what do we need to make sure our audience wants to come back? Take two, or is it take 2 to 3 weeks of work, reach base camp 1? And then the next part is assign team members with tasks that align with specific details that are important pillars of the game. In dividing this responsibility, you have accomplished the first step of coordination. And
Hey,
then
Katie, I'm so sorry to interrupt you.
yes.
I think they're summarizing what I said.
Yeah, they're summarizing what you're saying, but they want to ensure that like what they summarize is along the terms of what you are thinking of, and like whether or not like what they have summarized, like they're on track.
Yeah. Like I would, yeah,
Okay.
like yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. No worries. I was just like, wait, this sounds like a summary.
Yeah, so basically they at the end they said like this is just like basically their personal notes, and that they were just really excited and they just want to make sure that they get all of this straight.
Okay, cool. No, I'm super glad you're excited. Yeah, that all sounds correct.
Awesome. Well, I think that was the last of the questions, but we can give it 2 more minutes if anyone has any last minute questions for Christian to filter through. I know that there's some people typing in chat too, so we can wait
One
out
thing I
for like a
did
minute
not
or
say that
two.
I would like to say really quick is it's also very important to take breaks. I didn't put anything about that in here, but taking time away from your experience is so important. Just like a few days to clear your mind. This is important in any kind of work. So make sure you take breaks. That's all.
Awesome. Well, they responded back saying thank you so much for clarifying that they got all their notes correct. So that concludes Connect, and then hold off, or not hold off. We are going to be announcing more about the challenge within the coming weeks. So please anticipate that. So we're all excited. All right. Thanks everyone, and hope that everyone has a great weekend.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Christian.